Yeah.
Right, hi. For all those who've been watching, you'll be familiar with my good friend Dean, and Dean runs his own company, and I also am a director in a company that I've started 10 years ago. And so we thought that for the next 5 days, we're going to look at the subject, which, to be honest, you could talk for the next 5 years, I guess. But for 5 days, we're going to talk about the subject of scaling up a business. Certainly, it's something I've spoken to many people about, and I know, Dean, you've also not only done it yourself and have spoken to many people about it. So let's have a conversation. We're just going to have a conversation around that, and we'll see where we go. And I guess just to kick us off, I would suggest that before you do anything in life, you need to firstly understand the motivations for something. I always have this saying: if the why is big enough, the how is usually not a problem. So, it's about connecting with a why for doing something. Because, as I'm sure we're going to discuss, scaling up isn't for people who have a weak stomach. It is something that is hard. But then anyway, let me hand over the question to you there, Dean, and you can kick us off. Scaling up. Why did you do it? What was good? What worked? What didn't work?
I'm guessing you want the edited version of this, or else we'll be going on for hours.
But the PG version, all right.
Yeah. I think why is a question's relevant not just for business, isn't it? I was having a chat with my wife the other day, and I was saying that I go running, and if you don't have an end goal, like you're going to run this race or you're training for something, it's very difficult to focus because there's no consequence for not doing it. I'm sure we've all tried to get fit, and it's just, if you don't have any end goal, it's very, very difficult. And it's the same thing with starting your own business, really. You've got to have the end goal. I think typically the end goal is normally going to be freedom. We might look at it in various guises. We might say it's to make money, or it's to build this big company and have people working for me. But ultimately, it's to give you options. It's to give you freedom, isn't it? So that's the big why, usually speaking. And I mean, certainly I found that's why I've started a company. I think also the other part of the answer to your question, Dave, was it was the only option. I came out of a situation back in 2008, 2010 with the credit crunch, where I'd been doing my own business or having my own kind of role, but then you're then faced with trying to get back into the job market, and going to work for a company earning the kind of salary needed just was not going to be feasible. My CV had got too many bumps in it. There were too many years of weird looking jobs on there, like working for churches and other stuff like that. So actually, that wasn't really feasible to go back into that. I had to create something. So that I think certainly that's the kind of why that most people have, isn't it? It's either because they want freedom, or they have no other option, really.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. When we start a company, we do get these senses of grandeur. We think, wow, this could really become massive. And I think we all always want to be the next Apple or Google or whatever it is out there. And so we always, I think there's a desire to scale. I don't think anyone starts a business because they just want to keep it small. They would all love a business to grow large. The question, though, I think that I get asked, and I'm going to throw it at you, and I'll put some my perspective on it as well. Is scaling right for everyone? Is it right for everyone to try and scale their business? And if not, why?
Sure. I think it's probably to do with the kind of person you are. I think certainly scaling up a business, if you're someone who doesn't like taking risks, it's really not something you should be looking at, because there's all kinds of potential issues there. I think if you are the kind of person who's actually open to taking risks, it's a good thing to do. So I think it's really subject to the kind of person you are, really. I mean, certainly you and I know that we kind of, like, in some ways positive, some ways negative, are on the far end of the risk chart. So actually taking risks isn't something we kind of give too much thought to, but if you are looking to have a fixed income every month and you want to know exactly what's going on, it's probably not good. It's probably better sense to work for someone else who can take those chances for you, I think.
I agree. I think certainly for some companies, I'm thinking of some guys who just might be builders, for instance, who are really good craftsmen and great at building their houses. Actually, scaling up means they often have to leave the tools, the one thing they're really good at, and move to a more man management kind of role, which perhaps they're not good at, and as a result, end up destroying their whole business. And I do think that if you are in a business where you are the pivotal energy source of that business, and you really can't, replicate yourself, something we'll talk about later, then scaling up may be the worst thing for you to do. It may be just that you do what you do and your business reaches a ceiling and it stays at that ceiling and you're happy with that ceiling, So I do think there are some businesses then that, in my experience, scaling up is probably not the right thing to do.
Correct. I think so.
You agree with that?
Yeah, definitely.
But then I would suggest that the majority of businesses, though, if they are led by really an entrepreneur, somebody that entrepreneurs have a desire not just to see themselves empowered, but lots of other people empowered, and generally, the community and society uplifted. If it's led by those people, I think definitely scaling up is something that has to happen for the sake of health.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's say we've been running this business for 6 months, 9 months, and it's been yourself, Dean, or myself, and we've got 1 or 2 people working for us. And we look at this thing and we say, you know what, we've maxed out the amount of hours that we can bill for, etc. The only way now to grow is to scale. Where does your conversation first go when this comes? Where do you start?
Okay. I think I have got the answer to this over the past few months, and it's very different to what was going on before. But I think the best way to scale now, I'm coming from the point that I feel like prior to COVID, I had the business working quite well and scaling up was working well. The key thing there was having processes or training in place for people. So actually, the risk is when you scale up, you have a short time period where there's someone doing a job not as well as you can do the job. And that's what actually prevents most people from doing it, because they want to know that the job's done correctly.
Yeah.
However, if you've got processes that people can follow, it should arguably be possible to pass that job on to someone else to do to a fairly high level if you're working with them. So I think training people's up is absolutely crucial for that.
Okay, so you want to scale your business, and you're saying one of the first words you're going to write on your whiteboard in your office is training people. And I mean, you're essentially saying replicating some of the things that you do, replicating for someone else to do, to give you more capacity. Is that?
Yeah, and also beyond that is kind of processes. So the actual process. So for instance, every client receives the same treatment, if you like. So this is the process we follow for every single client. So not just training the people with skills, but making sure that you've got a set process, or at least a template process that you can give it to your staff, so that ultimately, if I've got 10 clients I can manage, but I've got 3 people working for me who can manage 10 clients each, then obviously that can scale things up.
Yeah.
The only way to actually make that work without me being involved with every single client is going to be that they've got a process that they work with.
Yes.
And I think I found that, kind of early days, you need quite some time to help people with that. But normally, pretty quickly, people do get the hang of it. And you do find that you don't need to be quite so hands-on. So that's a good way that you can actually scale it up. I'm sure that with Energy Drive, you found that also, haven't you? Because we've had chats where you've been doing the job, but actually over kind of recent time, that role's been passed over to other people. And now it's flowing well in terms of the fact that those people can pretty much do the job to the level that you were doing it before, can't they?
Yes, yeah. I want to pick up on a couple of things you said there. So I think the first thing that I've discovered is exactly what you said. the first thing you need to do is break your business down into its unique processes. I think there's a lot of stuff we do as business people that we do naturally, instinctively. You know, just things that we've done. And that, if you want to scale your business, I know for Energy Drive, we went from 2 employees, where we got now 70 employees. I had to tear down what I did in a normal working day into unique boxes. And then next to each of those boxes, to try and put a process around each one of them that somebody else could do, even if it was in bit sizes. I think that's what you're saying there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah, definitely.
And that takes time to do. I mean, let's just say scaling up isn't something you do overnight. It's something you do consciously. And I think sitting down and really unpacking what do I do? What is my role? And usually what we do is multifaceted, right? So breaking it into its unique parts.
Yeah.
So,
and I think also, Karen?
No, after you.
Sorry, I was going to say that often what you do tend to find is with businesses that are fairly small, maybe 10 staff or so, often the person that runs the business is the blockage to the business because everything has to go through that person.
Yeah.
So they end up being the funnel, and the funnel does get blocked. So you've actually got to have a situation where if you want to get beyond that point, you've actually got to trust people, and you've got to give people the opportunity to get things wrong and to actually learn from it, or else you will always end up being the speed at which your business can move forward.
That's again a crucial point, isn't it? We have to allow failure to be part of this process. You can't scale up without some failure. And actually, in my understanding of it, certainly my experience, to scale up, the initial 6, 9, 12 months of scaling up meant I was actually less productive because I'm actually spending more time training others, trying to work this thing out. So you have to have the long view, and it comes back to your motivation, your why, really firm and set in play in order to understand. There's one thing that I've noticed in coaching entrepreneurs. They fall in love, I call it falling in love with the vehicle rather than the message. You know, for instance, I tell a story of someone that wanted to send messages of hope to the next village. And so what they did is they had a little bicycle, and they would cycle down to the village with a sack of letters. And it became so popular that the sack of letters got so big, he couldn't carry it on his bicycle. The trouble was the guy was so in love with riding his bicycle that he wasn't willing to upgrade the bike for a van in order to scale the business.
Sure.
He fell in love with the mechanics of what he was doing and not in the actual essence of the business. And I think it's possible for us to really love doing the early stage of business and then not wanting to let that go. You got any experience around that?
I think that's true, isn't it, with most of us, that we don't necessarily realize it, but if you analyze businesses that have been scaled up and those that have been scaled up slower rather than quicker, or even those that don't get beyond a certain point, it usually comes back to the key players within the business having some kind of basically not being willing to let go of certain aspects of the business. They won't let go of the finances, they won't let go of the marketing or the technical stuff or anything. It's actually, just really there has to be some kind of process of actually wanting to train people up to do the job better than you can do it, which doesn't necessarily work well for ego, does it? The difficulty is you have often people starting businesses, not always, but there will be some of them that do have an ego, and then the idea of actually other people doing that job better than them is something that can actually cause them an issue, but that actually prevents them being able to scale it up.
Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the ego word. I was also going to bring that one too. Part of the website that we're building is bringing more than just business, bringing business principles into life and so on. And one of the life principles is that ego is usually the blockage to most growth in our lives. I think that certainly no better place to see that is when you want to scale a business is to invite someone else in and let them do a better job than you were, and you be very grateful for them,
Definitely.
Keeping your ego in check is something that I have to do regularly. I am now, as you know, working remotely. I'm working in the UK, And so I've had to let guys in South Africa do the job I was doing, and they're doing better job. And to keep that inside of you in check is not an easy thing to do, but it's vital if we want to.
Absolutely vital, isn't it? Yeah, definitely.
We've got 1 minute left, Dean. So on our introduction to scaling up, maybe you'd like to summarize what we've said, or what you feel we said.
Okay. Well, like with life, there has to be a why, and usually the why is something to do with freedom. It's to do with the fact that you want to generate some kind of ultimate long-term freedom, so that you've got options and choices. And what you do tend to find is the person or the people who start the business, their attitude is absolutely crucial to how the business works or not. Are they willing to fail? Are they willing to put into practice processes? Are they willing to make changes that could mean they don't have quite such a key role? I think really the answers to those questions are going to be really what impacts whether the business will scale or not, other than things like COVID and finances and cash flow, the obvious things. The things that we can control are going to be those areas, and certainly the outcome to those questions will impact whether or not a business will scale up quickly or not.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to be an interesting journey these next 5 days. We're going to try and tackle the whole issue of scaling up. Well, certainly we're just going to probably just scratch the surface of it. What we will do is we will put up on the Facebook page some books that you can go to, and some material you can read, and certainly some material that we've used in the past. So guys, thank you very much for tuning in, and look forward to chatting to you again tomorrow. And thanks, Dean.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave.